Okay. Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this morning. Appreciate seeing you all here. We are getting so excited and very, very close to launching the Homeowner Assistance Program. And so we're very grateful for all of your patience and feedback. So really thankful for everyone who's been able to participate. Before I get started, Dawn, do you have a quick question? Oh, no. Okay. You're just waving hello. So feel free to use the chat, raise your hand if you need to. I'll be keeping track of the chat and if folks have questions along the way. But our goal today is just to go over the checklist of resources that you all need for going through and getting all the materials ready as folks start to come to you and look for counseling and application assistance and legal services. And then to walk through the applicant portal and the case management portal. So we'll spend a bulk of today focusing on that so that you'll get a really clear understanding of how the portals will work and be able to answer any questions that you may have. And then we'll leave a little time for questions and answers at the end of the hour. So we do plan on wrapping up at 10 o'clock. So with that, any questions before I get started at all? Great. So I am going to drop in the chat here a couple of links, and then either Leslie or myself will kind of share the resources that that you all will be able to look at. So essentially the list of things that encouraging folks to gather as people are looking for assistance. So I just dropped that in the chat. In there. And then Leslie, I don't know if this is where, did you want to add anything here about the list of resources for folks pulling together the application?
I just wanted to mention that we are continually updating this as we think of ways to improve it, and we realized this week that we want to add HOA and condo fee bills that are outstanding. So to the extent that the that the homeowner is going to be asking for assistance for HOA fees. I wish I had a cat. Dogs are way louder and can't possibly talk over them. But so we'll be adding that bullet to this list, and then also in terms of what might be needed on the mortgage statement side. It would be good for the applicant to have ready if they do have any loss mitigation documents or a loan modification agreement. That would also be handy to have. So we'll be having those information pieces added to this list very soon. But generally, that list on the HAP website in the resources area is a good place to start in terms of what documents the applicant will need.
Great, thank you, Leslie. And you just reminded me, I'm going to drop in the chat here as well. And I'll be sending all of these links and resources in a follow-up email to everyone, including those who weren't able to make it today. But the loss mitigation, a very short video that VHFA put together describing loss mitigation and steps folks can take before applying. And there's a question from Bruce. Is there a list of data elements needed for the application, such as social security number and other things that we want to tell people to have ready?
No. You guys suggested that before, and we haven't had a chance to prepare that. I think it would be great. So as time permits and we're able to come up with a list like that, that'd be we will. But if you have suggestions about how to get this list started and want to provide that to us, we can add it to this resources page.
Well, great, that's a good.
I mean,
go ahead, Bruce.
I'm sure there's probably a really incredibly comprehensive list that the data, the software people had in order to create it, and obviously we don't need every single little data point that's in the portal, but the major guys.
That's not a bad idea. Thank you for thinking of that, Bruce. I could take a look at that list and just call out the pieces that that would make sense. Yeah, there is a list of all the application fields. It's long.
It's long. I'm sure it's long. So we don't. I don't want that.
Yeah,
but
that's a great idea for us starting.
Thank you.
Something
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Great. So Leslie, that's something you and I maybe I'll follow up with you right after this meeting, and we can maybe pull that list together. Thank you, Bruce, for that suggestion. Great. So with that, then I'm going to just briefly share my screen. And for those of you who are on the last call, this was a slide that we showed. So I'm just going to briefly share it. And again, I will share this with folks after the meeting. But this is just kind of a reminder of the resources and materials that folks, let's see here, that folks can access. So specifically the contact information. There you go. Is everyone seeing this slideshow right now?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great, excellent. So again, some of the resources for folks to just look at. I will be sending this out afterwards, but the HAP helpline, the HAP website, and then the video Know Your Options. So I'll include that link in there as well. And then there we go. For dedicated case questions, that email will be going to the homeowner assistance at vhfa.org. And then for any organizational, so invoicing, reporting, agreements, that can go to me at my email address. And then the web link that we'll send to you all, which is not necessarily a public web link, but just a resource for you all where all of these links will be hosted, will be there. And then any legal services questions can be directed to George. So any questions about that contact material? And I imagine this information will be much more useful starting next week as questions come up and things start rolling in.
I have a question about invoicing specifically.
Sure, go ahead, Andrea.
So if we don't see any clients during 1 month, do you want an invoice sent anyway?
It's a good question. I don't believe so, Leslie. That might be something we'll have to follow up with George.
Yeah, let's follow up. It doesn't sound like it would make sense, but we'll have to research and get back to you, Andrea. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, and I'll include that answer in the follow-up email. Excellent. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I just chatted the link to that that web page that's that has a lot of these resources that you've seen in the past. I moved it off the main list of agencies that were providing application help to its own web page that's really just meant for you all, since customers will be looking at that table of organizations that can help them with their applications. This is a separate page now just for just for the some of the tools and the videos of these meetings and things like that for you all to reference as you need it.
Thanks, Leslie, for dropping that in. And feel free to raise your hand or stop along the way. But I think at this point, we'd love to spend most of the time walking through the portal. So I think I'll turn it over to Sarah. And Sarah, if you want to go ahead, and I think we're going to start with the applicant portal walkthrough.
Yep, I'll just share my screen here. Right. And we've all, I believe this group has already done a walkthrough of the application, but I wanted to highlight some important fields that there were some questions about last time we went through this. So there are two ways of adding an application for all of our housing counseling agencies. One is to work with an applicant on the applicant portal, which looks like this. And then the other method, which I'll be demoing right after this, is entering an application through the case management portal. In general, if the applicant has all or almost all of their documentation and wants to get updates via email, you're going to want to help them in the applicant portal. This is where you're going to this is the preferred method of entering the application. There are some situations where you'll want to enter an application on the case management portal. So I'm just going to walk through this from your point of view. The most important field here is the first question. Are you filling out this application on behalf of someone else?
Sarah,
click yes. Yes.
Sarah, I'm just going to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt real quickly. I'm wondering if it's possible to make the screen just slightly bigger. I know
Sure.
we talked about this last time. It's a little difficult with some of the fields, but
is this a little bit better? Is that better?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Okay. No problem. I've got a big monitor, so it kind of stretches out there. So this first question, are you filling out the application on behalf of someone else? If you click yes, then you're going to select your organization. I'm going to say Champlain Housing Trust because I'm a fake Champlain Housing Trust employee for this purpose. And that is going to let you monitor that application in the case management portal after it's been reviewed for eligibility. So it's important that you enter your organization's name here. The name doesn't matter so much. It's just for internal organization. I'm going to go down here. This is all basic information about my home. I'm the applicant. So you're filling all of this out as if you were an applicant. And then there's this other field. This is where there were some questions. Would you like to designate an authorized representative? The authorized representative is a person, maybe a relative or a neighbor, somebody helping, that will also be alerted with notifications about the application. So this is not necessarily for you. You'll be able to look at the status of the application, but this is for a neighbor or you know, someone who would be interested in seeing whenever there's a status update change or calling into the helpline to help with an application. Does that sense? Are there any questions about the difference between those? Okay.
Sarah, we did have a question from Grace. Could you just scroll up to the list of agencies
Sure.
that might be helping? I just wanted to see whether Vermont Legal Aid is on this list, and they are, but my understanding is that Vermont Legal Aid is not going to be providing application assistance. Is that true, Grace?
So generally speaking, we'll be referring out for application assistance, but there will be cases where we have folks in active foreclosure where it might just make sense for us to do the application with them for some reason or another. And obviously for us to be able to follow what's going on with an application. So I think it's helpful to have us on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and if there is another organization, I mean, this doesn't apply to this group, but you can also select other and name a new agency. I don't know if that's helpful, but this is a pretty flexible field. Okay, so now I'm going to continue through the application and show you some stop points. So I've pre-filled some of this information. I'm kind of cruising through it, but it's all pretty self-explanatory, just asking about, oh gosh, this is the testing site, so you can ignore this little pop-up. They're working on an issue. Okay.
Sarah, just two quick questions that came up in the chat. Is there a place for them to give permission to include an interpreter in the conversations?
There is not a place to include an interpreter. Let me refresh this page. I imagine that you may want to include an interpreter as an authorized representative, potentially, depending on your relationship with that person, but there's not currently an interpreter line. We are using Language Line for case management, so there is interpretive services, but those are kind of not included in the application. Does that answer the question?
And we do have a couple of folks in the line that could be providing interpretation services. So just, I guess this is more of a question of, do we need to have a specific field for that, or can that be included in the authorized?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because the authorized representative is going to receive all this. They're going to be copied on all the notifications about the application. So you may not want to use an interpreter, I would imagine, for that purpose. So I can definitely bring that question back to our team and then send an update to this group with what they say about that.
I was just curious, because I know when we have an interpreter, we're sharing things like credit report information and affordability assessments and delinquency foreclosure. So lots of really personal information. Right. And so we do ask the client, if we're providing interpretation, they sign something that says, the interpreter is going to be involved in, but we'll hire people who are professional and hold things confidential. I just didn't know if there was some way, we needed to include you, or you needed something that if there is an interpreter involved in these conversations, they might actually be a conduit where they call someone there on behalf of the client. So I was just trying to think if we need to do something for you specifically, or if we're good to go.
I think we can assume that we're good to go. I will also let everyone know that we have this application available in 10 languages. So an applicant can fill this out in it's not Google Translate, it's a full accurate translation of the application. So and then I don't know exactly how the interpretation works on the other end, but that's another helpful piece of information.
Great, thank you, Sarah.
I think that for now, that authorized representative field, that we should consider that with the applicant, if they have an interpreter that's going to be working with them in the long run, that may be the right place to identify the person who's helping them.
So I'm sorry, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense that clients may not want to authorize an interpreter to act on their behalf. An interpreter, really, their only job is to interpret exactly what the client is saying and what is being said back to them. They should not have any legal authority related to the application or to act on behalf of the client. So I really have to object to them being included as an authorized representative.
And what would be the benefit of identifying the interpreter on this application anyway? If it's a one-time assistance that's between the applicant and the interpreter?
Yeah, and I do agree with Grace that I think if you're hiring an interpreter through a service of some kind, I mean, certainly if someone's bringing their friend or a family member, they might choose this route for that type of interpretation. I just was trying to think is if we're passing information back and forth, and so maybe it's a moot point. I mean, it sounds like perhaps we just don't need to do anything, but I was just curious if they're, you know, we have an agreement with you saying we can share information back and forth, right? With the contracts and the setting up the grant, we've given each other permission to speak back and forth. I just was trying to think is, do we need somewhere in there to include anything about interpretation? And it sounds like we don't, but I'm not trying to stir up a mountain out of a molehill. I was just curious because we're going to do some advertising in other languages. So we suspect, we hope actually that we'll see some folks coming through. So we're just trying to be prepared for that. That's all.
Yep.
Sure. So back to the application, I just want to point out that as I'm going through this application, these fields are auto-populating and the sections are auto-populating based on the inputs that I'm entering into the application. That is not the case for the case management portal, which you'll see in a few moments. Based on the questions I answer about income, particular income documentation fields will be required. So folks will get stuck here if they do not have the proper documentation. And in that case, they would just save and exit and come back, and they'll come right back to the same place whenever they're ready for that documentation. But those are required based on the questions that they're asking or that they're answering.
And Sarah, just to clarify, this is an applicant with a working email, correct? If they're going through this, or is this?
Yes, this is an applicant who has access to email and wants to receive regular updates via email, which is the preferred way of the system working. So if they don't have access to email, then you'll use the case management portal. But it's a little less user friendly. So that's why I'm steering you all to use this portal, if at all possible, if there is somebody with an email address, whether you're helping them set up that email address or if they have one. So here's the loss mitigation video that was referenced earlier. This needs to be watched in order for the application to continue. Well, at least popped up. We didn't watch the whole thing, but we don't have to say anything about that. All right, so I'm just going to go through here really quick.
And while Sarah's going through that, she had mentioned a couple of minutes ago that she is doing this right now in a test portal. You should not be doing any kind of testing in the live production applicant portal when you have access to that. That'll really screw up reporting because there's not going to be any way of filtering out test applications. So if you want to play around in here, you should definitely be doing this in this testing environment, which is not the live production environment.
And if anybody wants access who does not have access to the testing environment, we can set that up the same way we've set up access to your other to the production environment. So definitely let us know if you want to test, because even just entering a first name and last name without clicking submit, you're still creating a record, and that impacts reporting. So and you'll also get annoying reminders to come back and finish your application. So please avoid testing in the live environment and only test in the testing environment. I know it's very, very hard for some of us to to not test, but very important from our point of view.
Is there just a quick question in the chat for the benefits documentation that are required for the application? Can we have those? And this may be related to the question we had earlier in the conversation. Can we have those items added to the list of needed documents under the FAQ or resources?
Yeah, that's great. As I mentioned before, based on your income and other questions you answered, different documentation will be requested. We'll see in the case management portal the very long list of all possible documentation that's requested or that can be uploaded. So we can definitely get a list for you all for that stuff. This program is different, just as a reminder, from our previous program that multiple mortgages can be entered. So this is an unlimited field. It's not just for first mortgages. And say, yes, Green Mountain Power. So here again, just based on the questions that I've entered, it's going to ask for different types of documentation. And it's not going to let the applicant move forward without at least one documentation document per. And this third-party authorization document is going to be a little bit of a challenge, since people will need to print this out or sign it and scan it. So I can imagine you'll want to know about this. It's a little bit of a confusing document, but folks can, if they download it, they can fill this out, but they do need to sign it and then come back and upload it here. So now I'm going to review my application. I can see everything that I've entered here. I'm going to agree. Going to sign. And I'm going to submit. This is a great warning. Once you submit, there's no going back and editing. You can now track your different programs you've applied to on this screen. This is just for the applicant. So this has now been assigned to a case manager, and so they can see their application number, the status of their application, when it was submitted, and all of these dates will change as various programs will be reviewed and approved or denied. So what that looks like on the back end, or I should stop here and say, are there any questions about the applicant portal?
So we have two questions in the chat. So Grace asked the question around if there's an option to check that you can't upload a document because of extenuating circumstances. So just wanted to ask and see if there are options for folks to choose.
There is an option for if you have no income or really low income to, to check a box that says you don't have documentation. That will be followed up with a case manager, and documentation will need to be provided in one form or another at some point in the application process. But as far as the third-party authorization and other documents not related to income, depending on what programs you're applying for, like utility assistance, you'll need to provide some sort of documentation from your utility company. So those are stopping points in the application. And if an applicant is having trouble and they can't upload, or they're having technical difficulties, they can, visit an affiliate to help them with that, help them scan those documents in, or call the helpline. And there are going to be some forms of assistance or documents that can be sent directly to a case manager. So the application income, yes, you can say, I don't have this documentation right now, but there will still be documents that you'll need to upload in order to complete the application.
So Sarah, what about for, it does mostly, but what about for mortgage documents? I mean, you're putting in your servicer contact information. If you don't have recent mortgage statements available or you can't get them in, I mean, my understanding is that, on the VHFA side, you've got to go and contact the mortgage servicer to verify everything anyway. So is that not an option for folks who just can't get their documents together, and it doesn't look like there's there's anywhere to say, because of extenuating circumstances, I can't get these documents in?
There's not in the applicant portal. If they do reach out to an affiliate to help them, then we'll take a look at the case management system in just a second. There's no required fields at all in the case management system. So you can fill in as much information or as little information as an applicant has. And then when you submit that, it will be assigned to a case manager, and then they'll follow up directly with the applicant or possibly the mortgage servicer to get that documentation. It will just take a little bit longer potentially. So there is a way for applicants to do that, not through this particular portal. Does that make sense? Sorry, I can't see the chat right now. So
Yeah, there's several questions, so I'll just go through them quickly and make sure they get answered. But Grace and Bruce, I just wanted to make sure that your questions are answered for that piece. And Bruce, I thought you had a question on accepting e-signature on the three-party authorization.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there's a lot of good questions in the chat around that document, because that could be a real slowdown. Like,
there is an e-signature for a single borrower. So when we have multiple borrowers, there is not an e-signature. You can sign it with, a PDF program with Acrobat. You can insert your signature. So there is a way to fill this form out without printing it and signing it with ink. But currently there is no, like that little signing thing I did at the very end to authorize. There's no e-signature for multiple borrowers.
all right, just as long as, I mean, someone asked if that form could be fillable, if we could get an Acrobat, Adobe fillable form, and
Yeah.
And many of us have our own types of e-signature programs. If that's acceptable, that would be great.
Yeah, and I can
Okay.
follow up with you, but I believe that document can be opened in Acrobat and you can insert your signature in it. It's a little technically challenging for some folks, but it is possible.
I actually wonder if it makes sense to just email a copy of that form out to everyone as well, so that we can, whenever we make contact with a client, just send that document along to try and get a signature on it as quickly as possible, because it sounds like it's going to be necessary in every mortgage case.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, so I know we've got several questions in the chat, but Sarah, I know we've got to go through the case management portal as well. About if we take 5 more minutes for questions, do you think we'll have enough time to go through the case management portal, or should I wait?
No, that sounds fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, because I do want to make sure we get the questions answered. So, and this may have been answered already, but Karen, just want to make sure you have this answer that we have to save first and then submit.
You can save and exit, or you can submit. So you don't need to, the pages are automatically saved as you go through the application. Does that answer that question? You don't need to save and then submit. You can just click submit and it will submit the complete application if you're at that final page.
Okay, and there's several, as Bruce was mentioning, there's several questions around fill-outable forms and e-signatures. So it looks like we'll follow up on that and see if there's something that we can send out ahead of time. Yeah.
Yeah, we can come up with a process for you to, if you want to share instructions on how to download and possibly fill this form out without using a printer. Would that be helpful for folks?
It sounds like that would be helpful. Okay. And then are photos okay for documenting, scanning, or does it have to be? So I think similar. I'm seeing Dave nod his head. So,
yeah,
so
and
yes.
and when you do this on a mobile device, which we assume there will be a lot of mobile users, when you go to upload a document, you can either select a file from your phone or take a picture. So there's like a little camera option for folks to, if they have the document in front of them, they can just snap a picture with their phone.
Okay. And again, is there a paper version of the application?
Yes, there is a paper version of the application that we can share with you affiliates, but the paper applications will need to be entered into the system, the same digital system. And so that's what the case management portal is for, the transfer of that paper application into the system. And we can go over that in just a few minutes.
Great. And from Shonda, just does the documentation need to be added prior to the submission?
Yes, for this portal, it does. And some people, I will say, you know, it's not always the correct documentation. I was just uploading blank PDFs. It's not validated, but anything that you don't upload here, you'll need to follow up with a case manager, which will just add a little bit of processing time to the application. Those are required fields.
Excellent. Great questions. Thanks for sending those. So with that, Sarah, why don't we transition into the case management portal walkthrough?
Okay, great. So I'm going to come over here and sign into the case management portal as a housing counseling agency. We've seen this a little bit before, so I'll just quickly review. These are tasks that are assigned to me specifically. This task is please confirm. Oh, here, let me make this bigger for everybody. Please confirm this applicant has received counseling. So I can view the details of this task and say, I'm gonna close this because I've confirmed they have received counseling. Save. Oops, I'm sorry. Completed. And now I don't have any tasks. You'll very rarely receive tasks, maybe from your coworkers or other agencies. So this tab isn't super important right now anyway. And then these are review tasks, which is my history. This is everything I've done as a counselor. I've helped people create some applications. I've confirmed that an applicant has received counseling. And then this tab is the good tab with all of the cases that you have helped people with or that are assigned to your agency. So you can go in here and see what's going on with this case. Case info is where you can kind of click through all the different screens we just saw in the application and find out what their answers were. Additional screens just for admins of this portal is the applicant eligibility screen. So you can see if this applicant was not eligible for whatever reason, there would be a red X and tell you why. Once the case has been adjudicated, you'll see here application eligibility case outcome. It will say approved or denied. So that will be a really helpful screen for you for a case that's in review. But I'm going to go up here to this new application button at the top and show you how to add an application through the case management portal. So there are a few different application channels: a walk-in, phone call, paper application. That's really just for informational purposes. It doesn't change what happens on these next screens. It's just informational for the case manager and for you all to know maybe how to contact this applicant in the future.
Sarah, just sorry to interrupt. Just one quick question is how do we access the case management portal?
So nobody has access yet. You'll get an access link on Monday when we open the case management portal. So this is a test portal that I'm in right now. And you'll be receiving information on how to log in and access this on Monday. You'll just get your username and temporary password and a link. And since we're all set up in the system with our IP filtering and tunnels, we should be good. Okay, so I'm going to click this application and I'm going to start, we'll say walk-in, why not? So this portal to enter an application here, it's a little clunkier, but as I mentioned before, none of the fields, I guess besides name, are mandatory. So this is for people who don't have access to their documentation, they don't have an email address, that type of applicant. It's whatever you enter here, once you click submit, it's going to be assigned to a case manager who is then going to follow up with the applicant and try to help them piece together anything outstanding that they need. So we'll say, oops, here. Okay, so now I'm going to go to next. Authorized representative. So the difference here too is that we didn't get that question, is somebody helping you fill out this application? It's automatically assigned to your agency when you come in here and start the new application. So this is authorized representative. And you don't have to enter, well, this for the authorized representative, but you don't need an email address. And if you don't have an email address and you don't have a phone number, there's no way for the case manager to actually reach out to the applicant. So definitely try to include contact information if at all possible. It looks like this navigator thing was included, so maybe you will have to enter this as well. Here. And so I'm just going to click through here really quick. No income. Let's see how that works. Of course, they need help with their mortgage payment. So we can see that these are all the same fields from the other system, but nothing is mandatory. So there are no pre-filled fields. And I'm trying to get to the document upload so you can all say yes. So here are all the documents that could possibly be asked for on this application. So lots and lots of documents with little upload buttons. None of these are mandatory in this screen, but this is a good list that we could maybe pull from for all of those uploads that people may need, statements or income verification. So we can get that for all of you, but it's a pretty long list. And then due to pandemic related circumstances, I'm not able to provide income documentation at this time. Yes, I can click that. Still going to have to follow up with a case manager on that, but that is available. So now once I click submit here and I click done, I'm not going to be able to edit this application for the applicant any longer, even though this is the case management portal. It's going to be sent off to an eligibility specialist, and then it's going to be assigned to case management. And you may, need to help an applicant with any of the missing information here. Are there any questions before I click submit?
I just put a question in about geographic proxy. I think at one of our meetings, there was a discussion about folks who can't get income documentation, that the case managers would be doing a geographic proxy search and that people could potentially qualify that way. Is that still the plan?
Yep, that is an option. It's just there's not very many of those census tracts, Grace, but the case managers have a list of based on the property address, basically, of the applicant. If they are unable to provide income documentation, but they do happen to live in one of Vermont's few distressed census tracts by federal standards, they will not be required to provide anything. And then, of course, there are certain public programs that are means tested, and if the applicant is unable to provide standard income documentation, but they are receiving Reach Up or LIHEAP, or probably food stamps, 3 Squares Vermont, then they will be able to provide, I think it's an eligibility letter. I can't remember the name of the document, but we're just kind of nailing that down this week. So there's a couple of other options. Also, if the applicant happens to live in a mobile home park, they will not, and they're not able to provide standard income documentation, that will exempt them from needing to do any more in terms of income documentation.
Great. So do you know, is that all going to happen automatically? So I identify myself, by address, you can see that I live in a mobile home park. I click that I can't access income documentation. Will there still be case managers trying to get income documentation from those folks, or will they just be approved based on, meeting that criteria of living in a mobile home park?
I think they'll be prompted. Yeah, it automatically will see that, and it will prompt them for a mobile home park lease, just to show that they really, the address isn't enough to generate that. But if they check that they live in a mobile home park, and they're able to provide just a copy of some documentation that confirms that they live in the mobile home park, then they don't have to provide any more documentation. Is that your understanding, Sarah?
Yes, I think we have a few like income documentation exemption scenarios. So those are done at the case management level, but mobile home park and certain benefits that they receive, a letter, and then that census tract. So I think there are a few scenarios where income documentation is not required based on other factors. And now I can see the chat. This is great. I can answer some questions. I just want to answer Cody really quick. If we fill out in the case management portal for someone, does it get assigned to us for case management? No, you will not be doing any case management. You'll only be assigned the case if you need to perform counseling. So that's the only piece of case management that you'll be doing. You won't be doing any eligibility review or approval or denial or any of that. And yeah, so are there any questions that we haven't answered or that we want to go over before I click submit here? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and type submit. So now it disappears from my screen. It's gone. It's off to the case manager. And there's a little bit of a, here, let's see. So I think this might be the case. There's a little bit of a delay, 5 or 10 minutes before there's several background triggers that are happening, and then the case moves over to this HCA cases tab, so you can continue to track the case and see like application eligibility. And then this disbursement tab is also helpful, so you can see when payments are actually sent out. So you'll be able to see the date the payment is sent and the amount that was sent and where it was sent. That doesn't mean that that's the date that servicers or utility providers actually receive the payment and apply it to their account, but it is helpful. There was a lot of questions in our previous program about that for applicants. There have been some bugs and kinks in the portal since soft launch. Have those been fixed? Their fixes are ongoing as we find issues. We have a regular release schedule with our vendor who's managing this portal. So as we identify those bugs and hear about them, we are addressing them. If you hear of any bugs, please forward them to our team so we can test them and verify them and get them fixed. And technical assistance will be available through the helpline. So that 833 number, I believe, is what it is somewhere. That's where folks can get technical assistance, or you all can get technical assistance. Any other questions? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Great, thank you, Sarah. It looks like there's a couple of questions, but I'll just, we got confirmation that if there are no services provided in any given billing period, you do not need to invoice. So any services provided need to align with the billing period. So hopefully that makes sense. Just let me know if you need more clarification on that. And then I assume payments are sent electronically to servicers, utilities, etc. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. I think there may be some limited circumstances where we'll need to send a check, but yes, we are set up to send electronic payments to providers and servicers.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for walking us through that. Are there any other questions, either about the application assistance portal, the case management portal, or anything else related to what you all need? Any questions at all?
Can I just make a quick comment? I put it in the comments, but I just really wanted to drive home the point about a COVID-related hardship. So it can be direct or indirect, and most people should be able to meet that criteria as I read it under ARPA and the Treasury guidance, because most people have increased gas costs, food costs. Most people have purchased masks and hand sanitizer and cleaning products and antigen tests. And I believe on the application, although those items may not be listed, there is an option for, I have other increased expenses related to COVID, and then you can go ahead and write those in. So I just want to make sure that we're encouraging people to think about all of their COVID-related expenses.
Yes, there is an other field there, and folks can type in other expenses or hardships.
And I think that's particularly critical for the lowest income homeowners who have fixed incomes that may not have changed as a result of COVID, but they're also going to be experiencing these indirect increased expenses.
Great, thank you, Grace, for that.
Sorry, we
Go ahead,
listed
Leslie.
those expenses in the help text, but it's a little hard to see. There's a question just about the increased expenses, and we tried to list every possible type of expense that has increased during the pandemic for many of us. And but it's a little hard. Again, I worry about on some platforms people may miss the help text. So so thank you, Grace, for pointing that out.
I'd also just add too that we have, we try to keep it low barrier there with one question, you know, about COVID impacts relating to income. And if they say yes to that, they don't have to keep answering questions about COVID related impacts. So we keep trying to get them to say yes and giving them options of how to say yes.
That's great. Thanks.
Any other questions at all? Questions that you have? We're at the just about ready to get everything launched and ready to go. So we're really excited to have these conversations and ability to work through any questions or fixes that are needed. So on our end, we've got, it sounds like the biggest need right now is to get a list of data and application elements, that a major list of things, not every little detail, but the major list of things, and then look into a fill-outable PDF that we can send out. Looks like there's a question here. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you great.
Okay, so I have actually asked this question previously, but I just, I think that if people have a past due amount that is accumulated during their forbearance, and they are accept the offer from their servicer to defer that amount to the end of the loan, then this program will no longer pay off that amount. Is that correct?
Polly, can you answer that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. That's absolutely correct. What happens in that case is that it's being looked at as the problem has been cured. So in order for us to assist with any funds going forward, we'd be prepaying, which the program does not allow. So your assumption is correct. Now a loan modification is a different story, but your forbearance is definitely reformulating, and so no, we wouldn't be able to assist in that case.
Thank you.
Dawn, you've got a question. Go ahead.
We've had a couple of calls already. One in particular, it's like owner financing. Is that going to present a problem in terms of getting approval? So
Polly, can you?
It's not a bank. It's going to be, you know, the seller is financing.
Hi, Dawn. Can you repeat that question for me, please?
Sure. We've had a couple of calls with unique situations like seller financing. So, you know, it's not a mortgage company or the bank, it's an actual person that they're making the payments to.
Right.
As long as there's a promissory note, is that acceptable?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. We consider those the private mortgages. So yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you, Dawn. So it is 10 o'clock. Want to be mindful of folks' time. No, everyone has varying levels of busyness. So want to just say thank you for everyone's time and walking through this and your questions. It's been really helpful for us to make improvements and adjustments and think through some of these things. So very much appreciate it. So again, we are hoping to continue these conversations and provide space for folks to ask questions and kind of just talk about what's happening. So we'll be sending out additional invites in the next week or so. And I think we're looking at trying to do something on a weekly or bi-weekly basis just to check in as things start to roll out. So any other last minute questions, comments, other things? Otherwise, I think we'll sign off.
I think
Thank you all
Polly's
so much.
typing. I think Polly's typing something. Is that correct, Polly?
Yeah, sorry, I was reach out to Tricia. So, I would invite you to reach out to me separately, or if you want me to go into more detail, I don't want to take up the time. The modifications are really simple, and that is what we would look at as a temporary fix. And so with the modification, oftentimes we will get pushback from the servicers because they look at that as, well, we're going to extend it again, and they will look at it as the loan is current. There's still that obligation up front. So in essence, contractually, the loan is showing current in their records, but it's not current. So a modification takes some special one-on-one, and it takes some push, but modifications absolutely should be assisted. But there will be challenges with modifications for sure. And if you run into challenges as you go along the way, I mean, we're happy to intervene. That's what we're here for.
Thanks, Polly.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you all so much. We'll be sending out responses to some of the questions, and then all the links and resources in a follow-up email, including this recording. Thank you all.
Thanks so
Happy
much.
Friday.